Now, has Jeremy Corbyn, the Labour leader, misjudged his response to the Salisbury attack? Well, he received fierce criticism from Conservatives, unsurprisingly, and some of his own MPs after he failed to back Theresa May's decision to directly blame the Russian state.
Our response as a country must be guided by the rule of law, support for international agreements and respect for human rights. So when it comes to the use of chemical weapons on British soil, it is essential that the government works with the United Nations to strengthen its chemical weapons monitoring system and involves the Office of the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. The Prime Minister said on Monday, either this was a direct act by the Russian state or the Russian government lost control of their potentially catastrophically damaging nerve agent and allowed it to get in the hands of others. Our response must be both decisive and proportionate and based on clear evidence.
Jeremy Corbyn there. Well, Yvette Cooper, who chairs the Home Affairs Select Committee, was among those who spoke to condemn Russia's actions.
Can I welcome the Prime Minister's statement? Her conclusion about the culpability of the Russian state is an immensely serious one, and that, in addition to their breaches of international law, of the use of chemical weapons, but also their continued disregard for the rule of law and for human rights, must be met with unequivocal condemnation.
Yvette Cooper, the Labour MP. Well, a group of backbench MPs have put down a Commons motion supporting the Prime Minister's position, praising her actions rather than those of their party leader. And we're joined now by Labour MP John Woodcock and journalist Michael Segeloff. I presume you signed that motion. It's your motion, isn't it? It is, right. Let's talk about why were you so unhappy with what Jeremy Corbyn said initially in his response to Theresa May?
Well, I think what you saw yesterday was not a group of MPs who were standing up and criticising our own leader. Actually, we thought it was just important to put what we thought was the right position, to be absolutely unequivocal in our support for the government against this threat and to accept the culpability of the Russian state. What you had in the statement and then after it, in briefing that was given by Jeremy's spokesman, was a different picture. And so, given what was said after the statement, we thought it's really important for us all to be clear at a time when the UK has been attacked using chemical weapons by a foreign state, that should be absolutely no doubt what the vast majority of Labour MPs in the House think. Right.
Did you want to hear Jeremy Corbyn then explicitly say and condemn the Russian state for the Salisbury attack?
Well, of course. I mean, I want to see every single member of Parliament doing that, because I think it's our responsibility in these circumstances to take that action. But I was actually really heartened yesterday that nearly every single member of Parliament, including every other party leader, in fact, even Caroline Lucas from the Greens, was accepting of Russian culpability and backing the actions the UK is taking. So we've actually had our Shadow Defence Secretary, Nia Griffiths, being clear on this morning as well, which is also helpful.
Right. I mean, Nia Griffith and even Emily Thornberry seem to need to clarify Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour leader's position on this, because there was criticism of Jeremy Corbyn's spokesman, who yesterday referred to the problematic history of the use of UK intelligence. Why did they want to focus on that rather than the Russian state's involvement in this attack?
Well, I don't think they did. I mean, Jeremy got up in Parliament yesterday and repeated what Theresa May had said in Parliament a few days before. He's been unequivocal in ensuring everyone's aware that as long as the evidence backs up that Russia was involved in this, which it seems by all accounts that they were, then I'll take action accordingly. What I think is more interesting here, though, is that there is a clear outcome that we need to see happen, which isn't just the expulsion of a few diplomats or, some more financial sanctions, but actually looking at the way that Russia will be hit by this if we take action, which is in the city, money laundering. And that's what we should be talking about the Labour Party here. Just John's an MP for the Labour Party. Jeremy's come out quite clearly with action that should be taken. And instead, we're dilly-dallying around talking about the exact wording of statements made in Parliament.
Well, hang on a second. I mean, yes, of course we need to do with the city thing, but you can't avoid the fact that Jeremy Corbyn's view was equivocal, and he was saying we need the evidence. Now, I don't know where you saw this, but we just had a Russian journalist plugged into Moscow who completely accepted that this was the responsibility of the main Russian intelligence agency, the GRU. So there wasn't any equivocation from her. Indeed, she was saying it was rather worked in the interests of Russia. So I think Mr. Corbyn actually made an error in suggesting we needed more evidence. And listen, I've got the scars about the intelligence failure over Iraq, but that was very different because there we knew that Saddam had the stuff, and the question was, did he still have it? Here, there isn't any doubt about the fact that this nerve agent was used for this crime and that this nerve agent came from a Russian laboratory. So Russia was then given a period to say, well, did you use it or has it come out of your control? They failed to answer that. I think Theresa May was absolutely right to come to the conclusion that she did do.
To be honest, Joe, I think it was generous to a fault for the Prime Minister to leave open the option that this was in some way Russia losing track of its agents, because we have seen over the last 10 years an absolutely clear pattern, and I think this is not the time to dwell too much on this, but actually there will be a time to look at the UK government's action over the last 10 years, which has been really at times to very deliberately turn a blind eye to other very similar incidents.
Right, but the question here was whether you could make a definitive judgment on who was to blame. And Jeremy Corbyn seemed to leave the door open in the way that Jack Straw has said, and some other Labour MPs, and say that we should be cautious about making that definitive judgment. What other plausible explanation could there be?
I don't think it's about plausibility.
Well, no, but I'm asking you, what do you think? I mean, there is in their minds a possibility that it could have been someone other than the Russian state. What is that plausible explanation?
I don't think that's what's happened at all here. What's happened quite clearly is that Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party and colleagues of John's too have come out and said, as long as we have the evidence to show it's the Russians, we will take action. They've unequivocally said that. If you've seen Jeremy's tweet yesterday, it says the same thing. It's what's been repeated time and time again by members of his cabinet. But we also have international obligations, both to the international community in Europe and abroad, to make sure that we follow certain procedures when we're involved in diplomacy, not jumpy to conclusions.
Right, well, that's what I mean. So you don't want to jump to the conclusion that it was the Russian state?
But I can. I mean, I personally think it was, as I'm sure we all agree, but I'm not the next Prime Minister.
Do you think Jeremy Corbyn believes that?
But I'm not the next Prime Minister of this country. Right. I haven't got obligations to ensure we follow diplomatic protocol. And I am feeling quite uncomfortable sitting here being lectured about international foreign policy by people like John and Jack. Jack, if you see the Chilcot report, time and time again told that he was, responsible for making decisions that, hiding certain documents.
No, hang on a second. Sure. I was responsible for one of the people responsible for the decision to go to war in Iraq 15 years ago. Chilcot said absolutely nothing about the fact I'd hidden any documents or anything like that. I came out of Chilcot. Yes, they disagreed with the process we'd used. There was no suggestion whatsoever about my bad faith. So let me make that clearer. Absolutely.
Right, but Jack, do you think there is a reason to be cautious until we definitively know, until we have the evidence, if we could ever get that evidence?
There was a reason to be cautious, which is why Theresa May was absolutely right to take her time. Last Sunday, I was on television on the BBC, and I said the government needs to be cautious about this, not least because of our experience over Iraq. But the result of that caution is that there is now incontrovertible evidence about the origin of this nerve agent, where it came from. So at the time, the evidence is there. It's good enough for a Russian journalist as well as British politicians.
Well,
why isn't it good enough
Michael, do you
for
agree it's
the leader of the opposition?
Yeah, but of course, I think the outcome will be that Russia will be held responsible. We have due process.
But we're talking about the Labour leader's reaction, and that's what I'm asking you about. Do you think he was explicit enough in his response?
In my personal opinion, we have two people here who've time and time again been proved wrong in terms of foreign policy. And Jeremy has time and time again been proved right on Iraq, on Libya, on a man who's been to Turkey recently and praised the Interior Minister in a country that locks up more journalists than any other country in the world.
So is your answer to my question that, yes, you did support his more equivocal response in terms of who was responsible?
Sure.
Right, you do support that. What do you say?
I think reasons to be confident is that the overwhelming majority of MPs in this country are behind the government stance. The overwhelming majority of countries beyond that.
I'm asking about Jeremy Corbyn.
No, I know you are, but I think it's important to set.
Sure,
but I think it's important to set it in that context. Now, Jeremy is very influential, and what he's been able to do in gathering a hundreds of thousands of supporters. They do listen to him, and I think that it was unfortunate that for some of the last 24 hours there seemed to be an alignment between what his spokesman was saying and the disinformation and obfuscation which is coming out of the Kremlin. But there's an opportunity now for him to follow the lead of our Shadow Defence Secretary and make clear, actually, that we see Russia to be unequivocally responsible for this chemical weapons attack on our soil.
And isn't that where the focus should be? And in fact, if I answer that question, because we're going to look at some pictures of Theresa May, who is in Salisbury at the moment.
Precisely. I think it's such a shame, and it's kind of unforgivable that at a time when we're in a kind of a crisis in this country, international diplomacy, rather than coming on here and trying to hold the government accountable to ensure they take affirmative and quick action, and we've got John here moaning about Jeremy Corbyn, who has, again, time and time again been proved right. This government is a shambles. We had Boris Johnson making a mess this morning on Today programme. He's not taken seriously by anyone around the world. We've got... oh, sorry, go on.
Well, we're just going to have a look at these pictures because there is the Prime Minister, Theresa May. She is in Salisbury where the attack happened, the attack against Sergei Skripal and his daughter, Yulia, who were found slumped on a bench. She's meeting local businesses and representatives from Public Health England because, as you know, the advice came out to people who were in the vicinity of where Sergei Skripal and his daughter were found slumped was to wash their clothes and obviously take all precautions, although the risk was very low. Answer Michael's comments for us.
What I'd say, Michael, is when you are have the privilege of being elected to Parliament, as I don't know whether one day you might wish to do, you have to take a judgment on everything, but most importantly on matters of national security. What do you think is the right thing to protect your citizens? What is the right thing to uphold international law? And all of us have not come in this with, you know, how does it fit into the internal prism of Labour dynamics? We've actually thought that the Russian state has for many years been culpable of attacks on our soil, of flagrant violations, and that it is the right thing, therefore, to back the Prime Minister. I want everyone else to do that, and I want Jeremy to do it as well, but that is our focus on doing what we think is right.
And do you have total faith in Jeremy Corbyn if he were to become Prime Minister with the country's national security?
Well, look, that is a valid question, but it's not a question that I'm going to get into at the moment because the focus is rightly now on what is the package of measures that the UK government is setting forward and how should we respond to that.
Would you have faith in him being in charge of national security?
I think he needs to do some thinking before I have that faith. And Michael, the problem is, yes, Jeremy has sometimes been right about his position on international issues of conflict, but sometimes overwhelmingly wrong, because my recollection is, I could be incorrect about this, was that he was opposed to the invasion of Afghanistan in the light of 9/11. Well, he was wrong about that. He was opposed to the first Gulf War. He was wrong about that. He was opposed to action in Kosovo, and he was wrong about that. What you've got to do here is to make judgment rather than in every case where you're faced with a really difficult decision, ask for more information and more evidence, because sometimes you have to make these decisions on the basis of inadequate information. Here, though, we're blessed by the fact that the evidence is forensic and very clear.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Michael and John, thank you very much.